Okay. Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right? Yes, some tile. Okay. So let's get started. So for this session, we're gonna take a look at introduction to unit testing. And for this session, we're gonna have some demo by using a calculator app. Since it's an introduction, but if we are comfortable enough, we will move to advanced. But we will also have an advanced session on unit testing, where we will work with a full-fledged library management app, where we will see where there will be a different kinds of I would say components to it, and that will be, I believe, part of the next session, which is the advanced unit testing. And for this session also, we'll be using unit test, which comes pre built in with Python. And for the next, maybe we will see it with PyTest. Okay. So as usual, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Yeah. Okay. So my audio is clear, right? You guys can hear me fine. Okay. So let's get started. So why unit testing? So let's get started with what it is and why we use it or need it. So unit testing involves testing individual components of software such as functions or classes in isolation to ensure they function as independent. So the basic, like the main idea is going to be isolation and individual components. So this means that we normally test them in isolation to other components or functions, and we will just see how they react by using different examples. Of course, we do also have mock. It generates mock data for us if we need to, but the basic idea or the main grasp of this is individual components of a software, which are functions or classes, and we test them like in isolation or individually. So this helps us verify that each unit of code works correctly before integrating it with other parts of the system. So the importance is to catch bugs early, reduce debugging time and cost, involves code quality and reliability, acts as a documentation, showing expected behavior, supports more modular design, and easing refactoring and maintenance. The benefits are early detection of defects, simplified debugging process, enhanced the confidence in code changes, and facilitating continuous integration. So in addition to this one, what I would like to add is some real-world use cases would be, for example, if what could be a good example is if we want to create calculator. Okay, actually we will see it. So I think I will just leave that one to later. But one example would be, one use case would be if you want. So one of the best principles that we have to follow when we code or when we develop software is to have test-driven development. We call it TDD. So having this means you have to write the test first, because you already know what comes in and what's expected from that function. So you already write that test first, and then when you write the function, you just run the test, and you will see what's going to happen. So this has two benefits. The first one is you will you don't have to for each iteration or for each addition of codes. So for example, if you want to add another feature to the function, you don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to crash the system or not, because you already have the function that's going to test by taking in the input, and you're going to see the output. And if the output, the intended output, and the output you get doesn't match, is going to fail. So you will know that the new feature or the new code that you have added has caused some errors. So that's one use case. And another one is if you forgot to add some conditions to your function, which we will see in the example, it will be a good reminder that you should, it will be a good reminder because your test is going to fail. So we will see actually in example. So yeah, so for Python, we have two main frameworks. The first one is unit test, which is already built into the Python library, standard library. It's inspired by JUnit, idle, for structured and object-oriented testing. Of course, it's already built in. It comes. You don't have to install anything. It already has it. And PyTest, of course, you have to install it. It's a third-party framework with simple syntax and powerful features, but of course it requires installation. So this is much simpler because it comes in. It's already built in, but the PyTest is more powerful. But you have to install it. So for this tutorial, we're going to use unit test because it's accessible and widely used in Python projects. So some features that you have to know before we get started is the first one is test fixture. So this includes the setup and the cleaning for test, which includes, so for example, let's assume that your function or your test requires some data or some creation of a data. So if it requires creation of a data, that's called setup. Okay, so if it requires a connection to the database, of course, instead of connecting it to the database, it's recommended to create mock data, because if you remember on the first slide, we have talked about isolation. So to make it truly isolated, it's better to create mock data, of course, but if you cannot, it's okay. So test fixture contains two things. So the setup and the cleaning up. So the setup includes what you need to do in order to set up or to prepare for that specific test or for that test. This may include creating temporary files or databases or things like that. And then after you're done with it, you have to clean up. This means if you have created a temporary file, you have to remove it. If you have opened the database connection, you have to close it, and so on and so on. So that's called a test fixture. And test case is a single test which checks a specific behavior created by a subclassing unit test case. So we're going to use unit test case, which is just creating a subclass of unit test. So this is what we're going to do, and test suite is just a collection of test cases or suites organized for execution. So if you want to execute a number of tests together, you can use each test suite. So you can run them under test suite, and and test runner is just what executes the test and reports the result. It will just say pass, fail, or error, and so on and so on. So running a test, you can use, of course, Python -m for, I believe, Windows users, but Python 3 -m because you wanted to treat it as a module. And unit test, if you just say unit test is going to run every test that you have. So it has the ability to know or to identify tests. So if you just say Python -m unit test, it will just run them all. But if you want to specifically run a script or a test, you can just specify the name here and it will learn. And if you want to run it in a runner or in a script, when you execute a script, if you want it to also execute the test, you can also include unit test.main in the test scripts. Yeah. So let's just see some or one example of how we can use like unit test, and we will see some methods of unit test that we're going to be working with a lot. And of course, we will just see some best practices, and we will go to the demo. But before that, is everyone following? Is everything clear so far, guys? Just to check on you guys. Okay. Okay, that's good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's see just a simple example scenario where we want to test the ABS, which is absolute value of a number function, to just ensure it indeed returns the absolute value of a number. So for this, we have three test cases. So here we have we are initiating the test by using unit test case, and so that this class is going to inherit from unit test case. So we have three tests under here. So the first one is we want to make sure that it's going to work, or it's going to pass for positive number, negative number, 0, and yeah. So here, for the positive number, we are using assert equal. We have a lot of so assert equal, assert only assert is going to, we'll actually see it in the next slide what it means. But so here we are checking if the absolute value of 10 is equal to 10. So we already know what the absolute value of 10 is. So we give it 10. We already know what the absolute value of negative 10 is. So it's 10. We give it 10. And we already know what the absolute value of 0 is. So we give it 0. So what assert equal is, so what this test is going to do is it's going to compare the output of this and the output of this and see if they are equal. Okay, so that's basically what assert equal is. So it's basically saying absolute value of 10 is equal to 10. So if this is true, it's going to return true, which is a pass. And if absolute value of negative 10 is equal to 10, it's going to pass. And if absolute value of 0 is 0 is equal to 0, it's going to pass. So these three test methods check the absolute value for negative, positive, and 0 inputs. So assert value verifies that the function output matches the expected result. So we expect this, we are testing for this, okay? So this is just a simple example of how you can actually implement tests. Okay, but let's see some of the methods. So the first one that we're going to see is assertion. Of course, we're going to see how we can set up and clean up the things that we have seen earlier with the fixture, with the text fixture, and so assertion method. So unit-test class provides a variety of assertion methods to verify the behavior of your code. So these methods allow you to check if the expected output matches the actual output amongst other conditions. Of course, we have a lot of conditions as we have. So these are just some examples. So it has a lot of conditions. So they can take an optional message parameter, which is used to as an error message if it fails. Below is some examples of this. So here, the first example, you can see that assert equal AB. And of course, if you want to have a message, you can use, you can define it here, or if you leave it, it's okay also. So assert equal means A is equal to B. And assert true means bool's X is true. So if Boolean of X is true, it will pass. But if Boolean of X is false, it's going to fall. But if of course, like you have to know that assert true, there is also assert false, which checks if the Boolean value of X is false. Assert is and isn't. So if A is B, it will pass, but if it is not, it will fail. But if you use assert is not, it will do the reverse. Is none, of course, is different. So if x is none, it will pass. But if x is not none, if it has a value, it's going to fail. So if a is in B, it will pass. But if it is not, it will fail. Greater, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. You can also define them here. And list equal if list A. So if both A and B are list, and if list A and list B are equal, it's going to pass. So this is the assert is, I believe, I would say one of the most likely method that you're gonna be using a lot of times when you're working with unit test. So it's good to know it. The other things are setup and tear down. So setup and tear down are just setup. You already know it from the test fixture. So setup and cleaning up. So the tear down is just the cleaning up. So the setup. Commonly used test test methods are setup, which is called before each test method to set up the test fixture. If you want to initialize an object, or if you want to define a data, create a data or a file, temporary file, and so on and so on. It's going to ensure that the test starts with a clean environment. So it's going to create everything you need for the test with the setup, and it's going to make sure that the test has everything it needs. And the tear down is just called after the test is complete, and it's called to just clean up the resource. It could be, if you have created a temporary file, it could be deleting it, closing the connection with the database you have already created it, and so on and so on. Open it, or and so on and so on. So so setup class is just a class method called before all test methods in the class, and used to set up shared resources if they have a shared resource for the whole class. And after that, of course, so with every setup, there is a tear down. Okay, so if the class has a shared resource, the tear down class is going to be used in order to clean up the shared resources. And for the module is called before all test cases in the module, and tear down is just going to clean them up. Okay, so just they go hand in hand, and they work with each other. Okay, so before we go to the best practices, is everything clear, guys? You guys are very quiet today. Is everything clear? Or it's not new? Maybe you already you guys already know it. Is that the case? Okay. Okay, good. Okay, I'm gonna. In that case, let's go to the last slide, which is just best practices for unit testing. As I told you earlier, having a TDD is a good practice, even though it's a bit hard, I believe. But with the current progress of AI, it has made it a lot easier. So it's just writing the test first. So you define the test first before you start building or working on the function, so that you will have clear requirements, what you need to do, what's going to come in, and what's expected from you on the output. So that's a good start. Keeping tests independent with this ensures tests don't rely on each other to avoid cascading failures, because as we have seen in the introduction, it's good to test in isolation. Use mock for dependencies. So instead of mocking external resources such as database APIs to isolate units, as we have discussed earlier, if you can, it's better to mock the database data and APIs in order to make it truly isolated. But of course, if you need to, you can also include it. And testing edge cases is also really important, covering boundary values, invalid inputs, and error conditions. So of course, we're going to see it in the example, but For example, if your function has boundary values, for example, if your for example, yeah, we can take square root as an example. So for square root, you already have boundary, right, for the inputs. So you cannot have, of course, you can have, but if you want a real number value, you cannot use negative numbers for inputs, right? So testing it like for these invalid inputs and covering boundary values so that, for example, for let's say, if you are testing for correlation, maybe, I know it's not a good example, but if you are testing for correlation, you can see the boundary values are -1 up to 1, right? So you can test it by using the value 2, and if it passes, so you have a like an issue there, and so on. For invalid inputs, we have seen that testing for negative numbers for example, for square root case, and for error conditions. For example, testing a calculator with a string is also good, so that you will know how it's going to react, and automating test. So, okay, I think we can cover that. And automating tests is also one good practice, so that you will the test is going to run, integrating test into the CI/CD pipeline for continuous validation. This means whenever you push the like where the CI/CD is already there, whenever you push, it's going to create or run the unit tests and see if everything is as expected before, and if it is not, it will inform you. So that's a good thing as well. And use descriptive test names. So for the test, we have actually two types of naming conventions. So the first one is having test dash and the name of the function. So if, for example, if you want to test for calculator, so test calculator dash calculator is the appropriate name. And the second convention is having the name of the function and then dash test, so calculator dash test. And of course, having a separate folder for test scripts is actually recommended, but for some actually use it together with other with the main scripts. So that's actually another convention as well. But for our case, it's better to use the test folder for these scripts. Yeah, so I have included some resources. So since this is introduction, I have included some introductions for some examples that you can go through. And yeah, okay, so this is it for the introduction part. Is everything clear, guys? Before we move on to the demo, is it clear? Okay. I'm guessing that it's not a new concept. Maybe that's a good thing. Okay, let's move on to the demo, I think. Share. Yes, Takli.
automated test ላይ
Okay.
አይ ቲንክ ሲአይሲዲ ላይ ሪል ታይም ቼንጅ ሲኖር ነው ፓይፕላይን የሚነሳው።
ሶሪ ተቋረጠ በእኔ ፓርት ከሆነ አይ ዶንት ኖ ትንሽ ተቋርጦብኝ ነበር። አውቶሜትድ ቴስት ላይ አልከኝ?
ያ አውቶሜትድ ቴስት ላይ ሲአይሲዲ ላይ ቼንጅ ሲኖር ነው አይደል ፓይፕላይን የሚነሳው የሲአይሲዲ።
የስ
ሶ አዳዲስ ቼንጅ በመጣ ቁጥር ያን ቴስት ለማድረግ ቴስት ኬዞች አዲስ ቴስት ኬዝ ነው የምንጨምረው ፓይፕላይኑ ላይ ወይስ እንዴት ነው?
Yes. So ሁለት አይነት ኬዝ ይኖራል። አንደኛው ኬዝ for instance let's say you have added a feature to existing functions. So exist የሚያደርግ ፈንክሽን አለ ከዚህ በፊት like እየሰራ የነበረ ፈንክሽን አለ እሱ ላይ አዲስ ፊቸር ጨመርክበት እንበል። ሶ አዲስ ፊቸር በሚጨመርበት ጊዜ ኤክስፔክቴሽኑ ካልተቀየረ ለምሳሌ አንድ ኤግዛምፕል ለመውሰድ ኢንፑት እና አውትፑቱ ተመሳሳይ ነው but you have added some features to it እንበል። ሶ በዛ ኬዝ ኦልሬዲ ኤግዚስት የሚያደርገው ፓይፕላይን is good for now so that it's going to see if the expected input ገብቶ expected outputን እንደሚያገኝ. So that's one case. But the second one is አዲስ ፈንክሽን ወይ ደግሞ አዲስ ፊቸር like outside like አዲስ የሆነ ነገር በመጨመርበት ሰዓት of course you have to also add the feature sorry the test. So ቴስቱንም ኢንዲቪጁዋሊ መጨመር አለብን ማለት ነው። So በመጨመርበት ጊዜ CI/CD pipeline is going to just run unit test ብሎ ረን በሚያደርግ ጊዜ ቴስቱን ራሱ ስለሚያገኘው it's going to run it and ፌል አደረገ ፓስ አደረገ የሚለው ይነግራል። Is that clear? Technically or
አይና ለምሳሌ ኒው ፋንክሽን ላይ አድ ሲደረግ እሱን ቴስት ለማድረግ ያ ፋንክሽን ኢንፑቱ የተለያየ ሊሆን ይችላል።
አዲስ ፊቸር like አሁን ለምሳሌ ኢንፑት እና አውትፑትን የሚቀይር ከሆነ like you are changing the whole thing ማለት ነው። the whole thing ማለት አሁን ለምሳሌ ኢንፑት ከዚህ በፊት ሁለት ኢንፑት ተቀብለ ለምሳሌ አውትፑትም ሁለት ነበር እንበል። ከዛ አዲስ ፊቸር እዛው ፈንክሽን ላይ ሲጨምር ሶስተኛ ኢንፑት የምትቀበል ከሆነና አራተኛ ኢንፑት ማለት አውትፑትም እንደዛው የሚጨምር ከሆነ it's better to add or to update the test like እንደዚህ አይነት ፊቸር ቼንጆች ካሉ። ነገር ግን እሱ ደግሞ ማለት like እንደዚህ አይነት ቼንጆችን አመጣ ማለት ደግሞ the whole system እየቀየረ ነው ማለት ነው። so that means አዲስ ሲስተም ማለት አዲስ ቴስቶችን እንጽፋለን ማለት ነው። but ሁለተኛ ኬዝ የመጀመሪያ ኬዝ ብያቀረብኩት ምንድነው የሆነ ነገር ኤዲት ለማድረግ ከፈለክ in your function to see that how that is going to affect your current system exist የሚያደርገውን ማየት ይችላል። Okay. Good question, Takli. Thank you for asking. What about the rest? ሌላ ጥያቄ ያለው ሰው አለ before we move to the demo? Is everything clear so far? Introduction ላይ confirmation ማግኘት ይችላሉ guys. Is it clear? Because I'm going to expect like test unit testoችን በዚህ submission that's why. Okay.
ክሊር ነው
ገብሬት ምናኪ
ክሊር ነው አሪፍ ነው ያስረዳል።
Okay. Good. Okay, in that case why is it not letting me change? Okay, let me just this. Okay, can you see my screen? Let me at least I think sorry, I think I don't know why. Okay. I think I can share now. Yeah, okay. So you can see it, right? I think ትልቅ ማድረግ እችላለሁ። Yeah, okay. So is this better? ይሻላል አሁን ለማየት? Okay, good. So ለምሳሌ just a simple example now for now, but for the future we'll also have like the library app ያልነው library management system ያልነው አለ but for now let's start simple and take a look at the calculator app. So calculator አፓችን ምንድነው? Simple calculator for test driven development ነው. So run tests, it will fail of course, and we will uncomment እንትኖችን እሱን እያየን እንሄዳለን። So የመጀመሪያው adding ነው. So a plus b, subtraction is going to return a minus b, multiplication a plus b, a times b, but here, so here we have a condition አይደለ? So እዚህ ጋር division ላይ number divided by 0 that doesn't make sense. Of course it has a value for mathematicians, but for us let's just assume that it's invalid አይደለ? ወይ ደግሞ undefined. So ይሄኛው ኬዝ የለንም እንበል ለምሳሌ። so አሁን ለምሳሌ when we test like TDD በምንልበት ጊዜ መጀመሪያ የምንጽፈው is the test። የመጀመሪያ ስራችን የሚሆነው መጽሐፍ የምንጽፈው is the test። ከዛ በኋላ ቴስታችን ላይ ይሆናል። ለምሳሌ አዲሽን ላይ ፖዚቲቭ አዳረግን አድን ጠራ ነውና 3 እና 5 ሰጠ ነው። ከዛ ሪዛልቱን ደግሞ 8 አልነው። 8 ጋር እኩል ከሆነ ያልፋል። እዚህ ጋርም ኔጌቲቭ 3 እና ኔጌቲቭ 5 8 አልነው። ኔጌቲቭ 8 it should work። 10 እና 3 7 አልነው። okay subtract ነው sorry subtract ነው. so it should work. 10 minus 3 multiply 4 times 5 it should work. multiply 5 times 10 it should work. ከዛ በኋላ division ላይ we need to test, we wanted to test 10 ሲካፈል ለ2 it should work. and here ግን 10 ሲካፈል ለ0 አለው it shouldn't work አይደለ? ስኩዌር ሩት ላይ ደግሞ 9 አለን ከዛ 0 አለን this should work, but እዚህ ጋር ደግሞ -4 አለን so it shouldn't work. so እነዚህኞቹ just እንትኖች ናቸው just to make it easier to see. so it shouldn't work እና should workን ዲፋይን አድርገናል። ከዛ በኋላ we come here and we just wrote እነዚህን ፈንክሽኖች so ለዲቪዥን a divided by b አልነው፣ ለስኩዌር ሩት ደግሞ maths.square root of a number አልነው። so we didn't specify anything። ያ ማለት it's not going to check ለምሳሌ ስኩዌር ሩት እስከማስገባቱ በፊት ከዜሮ በታች ነው ወይ ብላ ከዜሮ በታች ከሆነ አስወግደው ወይ ደግሞ ሬዝ አድርግና ቫልዩ ይደርስ አይደለም። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ እዚህ ጋር ዜሮ ከሆነ አይካፈልም፣ ስለዚህ ቫልዩ ይደርስ አይደለም ኦን ኢኒሺያሊ ማለት ነው አይደለ? so if we run with this one, so let me just clear this one and Python. so it's already built in, so ምንጭ ነው ነገር የለም። 3 minus n sorry unit test. so by saying unit test is going to unit test ያለባቸው እንዳለ ራሱ አይደንቲፋይ አድርግቶ ነው ራሱ እንትን የሚለልን we don't have to specify the okay. so here fail አድርጓል። so we can see here and fail እና and error አለ ያለ ነው። so we can see it here ምንድነው ኤረሩና ምንድነው እንትኑ የሚለው ማለት ነው። so ካልኩሌተር የሚለው ላይ ላይን 40 ላይ which is here, so a divided b በመነለበት ጊዜ division by 0 division errors by the way ይሄኛው የራሱ built in ነው። so division by 0 ሚል ኤረር ሰጥቶናል። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ቴስት ስኩዌር ሩት ቴስት ላይ ደግሞ እዚህ ጋርም the same ማትስ ምን አይነት ኤረር መለሰልን? cannot calculate square root of a negative number አለ። so እነዚህን ኤረሮች መለሰልን ማለት ነው። so here what if we just uncomment this? so መልሼ እንትን ስለምለው why is it yeah what if we uncomment this? ያ ማለት ምንድነው like divide ከማድረጉ በፊት is going to check ከዜሮ በላይ እንደሆነ ማለት ዜሮ እንዳልሆነ ከዛ በኋላ ዜሮ ከሆነ cannot divide by 0 ብሎ ይመልሳል። ከዛ በኋላ ከሆነ ደግሞ returns a divided b ይሆናል። so if we run this, so አንዱ ኤረር ጠፍቷል፣ አንዱ ብቻ ነው ፌል ያደርጋል which is the negative number. sorry የኔጋቲቭ ነምበሩ ነው የቀረው። so እንደዚህ ያደረግን like if we already like invalid የሚያደርገውን ቦታ ላይ ቴስት የምናደርግ ከሆነ of course this is a very simple case, but invalid የሚያደርገው ቦታ ላይ ቴስት የምናደርግ ከሆነ ወይ ደግሞ ባውንደሪዎች ላይ ቴስት የምናደርጋቸው ከሆነ it should work, like it should be good ጉድ ቴስት ማለት ነው። ለምሳሌ እዚህ ጋር ደግሞ መተን ሶ ኦልሬዲ ላይክ ኤቭሪቲንግ ሹድ ፓስ ምክንያቱም ለስኩዌር ሩቱም ከዜሮ በላይ እንደሆነ ቼክ አድርጎ ከዛ በኋላ ዜሮ በላይ ከሆነ ብቻ ነው ስኩዌር ሩት ውስጥ የሚያስገባው። ሶ ኢት ሹድ ወርክ ማለት ነው። በኔጋቲቭ ሪዝንም ብናስገባ ኔጋቲቭ ሪዝንም ባናስገባ ማለት ነው። ሶ ዲስ ኢዝ ዋት አይ ሚን ባይ ቴስት ድሪቨን እና ደግሞ ዩኒት ቴስት በቀላሉ as an introduction is this one. So we can actually take a look if this is clear. Majamara, let me check if it is clear. I know it's a very simple case. But is it clear, guys? Okay. So this is good to get started actually. Then let me start like to just dive a bit deeper. Let's take a look at another example, which is the book. So like if it is hard, don't worry about it. Actually, if it is hard sound, if it is too much, like we will also see it in another session. I don't answer less now. Don't worry about it. Like to get started, the simple demo is enough. Okay. So ለምሳሌ ቡክ ላይ ደግሞ ምን አለን? ለምሳሌ ቡክ የሚል ፓይተን ላይብራሪ ላይክ ሶሪ ስክሪፕት አለ እና ደግሞ ዩዘር የሚላለን ፎር ደ ቡክ ኢትስ ጀስት ቱ ትራክ ደ ቡክ። ያ ማለት ምን ይኖሩታል? ቡኩን ታይትል ይኖረዋል፣ አውተር ይኖራል፣ አይኤስቢኤን ኢፍ ዩ ዶንት ኖ ኢት ላይክ አይኤስቢኤን ማለት ትራክ ላይክ ሁሉም መጽሐፍ እና ሁሉም ፔፐር አይኤስቢኤን ነምበር አለው። ኢት ኩድ ቢ 10 ወይም ደግሞ 13 ከሁለቱ ውጭ አይሆንም። እና ደግሞ ኮፒስ ኢትስ ጀስት ኤ ነምበር ኦፍ ኮፒስ ዲፎልት ዋን ነው። መጽሐፉ ላይክ መጽሐፍ ገባ ስንል ወይ ደግሞ አዲስ መጽሐፍ ስናስገባ እነዚህ ነገሮች መኖር አለባቸው ማለት ነው። ያ ማለት የታይትሉ መኖር አለበት፣ ጸሐፊ መኖር አለበት፣ አይኤስቢኤን መኖር አለበት። ከዛ ኮፒ ባናስገባለት ራሱ ዲፎልት አንድ ይወስዳል። ምክንያቱም ቢያንስ አንድ ስናስገባ ነው አስገባን የምንለው። ሶ ዚስ ጀስት ቫሊዴቲንግ ዘ ታይትል። ሶ ታይትሉ ቁጥር መሆን የለበትም። it should be string. ሶ ለምሳሌ እዚህ ጋር ቴስት ላይ ማየት እንችላለን። ቁጥር ብናስገባበት it should fail። ነገር ግን አሁን ላይ of course since we have already stated that value error እንዲሰጠን ቁጥር ካልሆነ ግን ይሄንን ብናጠፋው እና ይሄንን ኮመንት አድርገን ቁጥር ብንሰጠው it should fail። like of course output ላይ fail ስለብናደርገው it should fail። ስትሪፕ ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ኤምፒቲ ከሆነ ቼክ ያደርጋል። ኤምፒቲ ካልሆነ it's going to use it። አውተርም እንደዛው the same thing። ቫይሌት አይኤስቢኤን ነምበር ደግሞ ላይክ ቁጥሩ አይኤስቢኤን ከ13 እና ከ10 መሃል መሆን አለበት፣ ቁጥር መሆን አለበት። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ሃይፈን እና ስፔስ ካለ ደግሞ እነሱን ሪሙቭ ያደርጋቸዋል። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ በስትሪንግ መሆን አለባቸው ብሎ ይቀበላል። ኮፒዎቹ ደግሞ ቢያንስ አንድ መኖር አለበት። ከአንድ በላይ ካልሆነ ወይ ደግሞ ኔጌቲቭ ከሆነ is going to reject it። ቁጥር መሆን አለበት። አቬሌብል ማለት ደግሞ ነምበር ኦፍ ኮፒስ ከዜሮ በላይ መሆን አለባቸው። ያ ማለት ምንድነው? አለ ማለት መጽሐፉ ቢያንስ አንድ ኮፒ መኖር አለበት። ቼክ አውት ሬት ደግሞ ምን ያህል ሰው ቼክ አውት አድርጎታል፣ ያ ማለት ምን ያህል ሰው ወስዷል የሚለውን ደግሞ ካልኩሌት ለማድረግ ቶታል ነምበር ኦፍ ኮፒስ አሉን። ዜሮ ከሆነ ዜሮ ነው፣ ግን ካልሆነ ደግሞ ቶታል ነምበር ኦፍ ኮፒስ ሲቀነስ አቬሌብል ኮፒስ ሲካፈል ለቶታል ኮፒስ ነው የምናደርገው። ቼክ አውት ደግሞ ቼክ አውት በሚያደርጉበት ጊዜ ላይ አቬሌብል ኮፒስ -1 እናደርገዋለን። ሪተርን ቡክ ሲመልሱ ደግሞ +1 እናደርገዋለን አቬሌብል ኮፒስ። ከዛ ደግሞ አዳዲስ ኮፒዎች ከገቡ ኮፒ የምንለው ያው አንድ መጽሐፍ ሁለት መጽሐፍ ላይ አንድ አይነት መጽሐፍ ሆኖ ቁጥሩ ሲሄድ ማለት ነው። አዳዲስ ቁጥሮች ሲገቡ ደግሞ ኮፒውን አድ እናደርጋለን። ግን ያንን የምናደርገው ቶታል ኮፒ አለን። ያ ማለት ቶታል ኮፒ ማለት ሰው የወሰደውንም ሲደመር ላይብራሪ ውስጥ አሁን ያለው ማለት ነው። አቬሌብል ኮፒ ግን ያለው ማለት ምንድነው? ላይክ ጀስት ቶታል ኮፒ ሲቀነስ ሰው የወሰደው ማለት ነው። ሰው እነዚህን ይጨምራል በካውንት ማለት ምን ያህል ኮፒዎች ገቡ የሚለው ነው። ፖዚቲቭ እንደሆነ ቼክ ያደርጋል። ከዛ በኋላ ኢንፎርሜሽን ከፈለግን ደግሞ እነዚህን ማየት እንችላለን። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ እነዚህ ጀስት ሪፕሬዘንቴሽን ኦፍ ዘ ቡክ ናቸው በታይትል እና በአውተር። እዚህ ጋር ደግሞ ሪተርን ላይክ ዴቨሎፐር ሪፕሬዘንቴሽን የሚባል ደግሞ አለ which is title author ISBN total copies እና እንደዚህ ናቸው። ለዩዘር ደግሞ አንድ ዩዘር ስንመዘግብ is going to have ዩዘር አይዲ ይኖረዋል፣ ዩዘር ኔም ይኖራል፣ ኢሜል ይኖራል፣ ሜምበርሺፕ ታይፕ ይኖራል፣ ሬጉላር ፕሪሚየም ስቱደንት የሚል ማለት ነው። ሶ ኢኒሻላይዝ ለማድረግ ቢያንስ እነዚህ ያስፈልጉናል ቢያንስ። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ቦሮ ካደረገ ቦሮድ ቡክስ ይኖሩናል። እነማንን ነው ያደረገው እና ደግሞ መቼ ነው ያደረገው የሚለውን እናያለን። ቦሮዊንግ ሂስትሪ ደግሞ ላይክ ከዚህ በፊት ያለው ቦሮዊንግ ቡክስ ተደምረው ማለት ነው ላይክ ሁሉም ሲቀመጡ ማለት ነው። ቶታል ፋይን ደግሞ ካረፈደ ምንቀጣው ነው። ከዛ ክሬትዳት መቼ ተመዘገበ ይሄ ሰውዬ እና ደግሞ አክቲቭ ነው። ይሄኛው አቶሚክ ላይክ ስንመዘግበው ኦፍ ኮርስ አክቲቭ ሆኖ ነው የሚመዘገቡ። ከዛ በኋላ ግን ዲአክቲቬት ማድረግ እንችላለን ማለት ነው። ይሄ የሚያሳየን ኦኬ። እሺ ከዛ በኋላ we have ቫሊዴት ዩዘር አይዲ ስትሪንግ መሆን አለበት። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ኤምፒቲ መሆን የለበትም፣ ካልሆነ ይቀበለዋል። ኔሙንም ዘሴም ቢያንስ ሁለት ፊደል መኖር አለበት። ቁጥር መሆን የለበትም፣ ስትሪንግ መሆን አለበት እና ደግሞ ኤምፒቲ መሆን የለበትም። ኢሜይልም ደግሞ የራሱ ቫሊዴሽን አለው። ሜምበርሺፕ ታይፕ ደግሞ ከሶስቱ ውጭ መሆን የለበትም። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ አላውድ ቡክስ ቅድም 5 ብለናል። ሜቢ ስንጀምር አንድ ሰው መውሰድ የሚችለው በአንዴ 5 ብቻ ነው። ግን ይሄ ለእንትኖች ነው፣ ለሬጉላሮች ነው። ለፕሪሚየም ከሆነ 10 ነው which is +5። ለስቱደንት ከሆነ ደግሞ -2 ወይም ደግሞ 3 ማለት ነው። ከረንት ቡክ ካውንት ምን ያህል ወስዷል ይሄ ሰው እየተበድሯል። ቼክ ኢፍ ዘ ዩዘር ሞር ቡክስ ለምሳሌ ሬጉላር ሆኖ ማለት 6 መጽሐፍ ተወሷል ወይስ አልተዋሰም የሚለውን ኦፍ ኮርስ you shouldn't allow it. ቦሮ ቡክስ ካን ቦሮ ቡክስ ኦር ካናት ወይ ደግሞ ፋይኑ ለምሳሌ እዚህ ጋር we have a lot of conditions። ለምሳሌ ካን ቦሮ ሞር ያ ማለት አክቲቭ ነው ወይ መጀመሪያ እናያለን። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ አሁን የተዋሳቸው መጽሐፎች ከማክሲመም አላውድ ያንሳሉ የሚለው እናያለን። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ፋይን $10 በላይ ከሆነ አንቀበለውም፣ ከ$10 በታች ነው ወይ የሚለው እናያለን። ከዛ ከዛ ሪኮርዶች ይኖራሉ። ሪተርን ቡክስ የተበደራቸውን ማየት ነው። ኦቨርዲው ደግሞ ቡክስ ደግሞ ላይክ መጀመሪያ ላይ አክቹሊ ዲፋይን አድርገናል። ለምሳሌ አይ ቲንክ እዚህ ጋር አለ ማክሲመም ሎንግ ፒሪድ 14 ቀን ነው። ያው 14 ቀን በላይ ሆኖታል ያልሆነ ነው የሚለውን ነው የምናየው። ሶ ጀስት ላይክ ፉል ፍሌጅ ስለሆነ ነው። ኦኬ ጀስት ኤግዛምፕል ስለሆነ ነው። ኦኬ ከዛ እነዚህ ዩቲሊቲዎች ናቸው። ጀስት ቱ ካልኩሌት እንትኖችን ምናምን ነው። ላይክ ለምሳሌ ዲስካውንት ካለ ዲስካውንቶችን ካልኩሌት ለማድረግ፣ ቅጣት ካለው ቅጣት ማድረግ ምናምን ናቸው። ላይክ ሌላ ነገር የለውም። ሶ ሌትስ ካም ቱ ዘ ቴስት አክቹሊ ቴስቱን እንየው። ሶ ቴስቱን ስናየው አሁን አንደኛው ቴስት ምንድነው? ሶ ሴትአፕ አለ። ሶ ይሄኛው ላይክ ኦፍ ኮርስ ቅድም እንዳልኳችሁ እንደቅድሙ ሳይሆን ላይክ ሜቢ ጀስት ኤ ቢት አድቫንስድ ነው። ሶ ሴትአፕ እና ቲር ዳውን ይኖረዋል። ሶ ሴትአፓችን ምንድነው? የሚያስፈልገውን ነው የምናደርገው። ለሁሉም የሚያስፈልግ ነው ይሄኛው። ሶ ለምሳሌ ለቡክ ምን ያስፈልገዋል? ስም ያስፈልገዋል። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ጸሐፊ ያስፈልገዋል። አይኤስቢኤን ነምበር ያስፈልገዋል። ነምበር ኦፍ ኮፒስ ያስፈልገዋል። ቅድሙ ላይ አስታውሳችኋል አይደል? እዚህ ጋር ቡክስ ላይ ኢኒሺየት ለማድረግ we need 3 things ማለት 4 things at least ታይትል፣ አውተር፣ አይኤስቢኤን እና ኮፒስ። ሶ እሱን ኢኒሺየት ያደርጋል ወይ ደግሞ ሴትአፕ አድርገው ማለት ነው። እዚህ ጋር ሲንግል ቡክ ኮፒ ደግሞ ከፈለግን ለኤግዛምፕላችን so this is the number of the book, this is ደግሞ the author ከዛ አይኤስቢኤን ነምበር ከዛ ደግሞ number of copies ነው። ቴል ዳውን ደግሞ ማለት like የሚያጠፋው ነው ማለት ነው። ይሄንን ግን እዚህ ጋር like if we don't have since we don't have file case ስላላደረግን database connection ስላላለን like pass ነው የምንለው። ግን like ፔንት አድርገን ቢሆን ኖሮ ፋይል እዚህ ጋር ነው የምናጠፋው ማለት ነው በቲር ዳውን። ኦኬ ሶ ለምሳሌ የመጀመሪያውን ኢኒሻላይዝ እናደርገው። ሶ ኢኒሻላይዝ ለማድረግ assert equals book title ለምሳሌ እዚህ ጋር ፓራሜትር ነው። ኦኬ ሶ ለምሳሌ book creationን ቴስት ለማድረግ ፈለግን። ሶ assert equals book.title ወሰድን። ሶ it should have title ቴስት ታይትል የሚለውን ለአውተሩ ደግሞ ይህንን ነምበር ኦፍ ኮፒስ አቬይላብል ኮፒስ ክሬትድ ደግሞ የሚለው አሁን ላይ መሆን አለበት የሚለውን ጀስት ቴስት ለማድረግ ነው። ክሬሽን ዊዝ ዲፎልት ኮፒስ ስንት ኮፒዎችን እየቀያየርን ማየት እንችላለን። ክሬሽን ስትሪፕ ዋይት ስፔስ ያደርጋል አያደርግም የሚለውን ማየት እንችላለን። ምክንያቱም እነዚህ መጥፋት አለባቸው መጀመሪያ ላይ። ለዛ ነው ቅድም ስምና አውተር ላይ ኔም ኦፍ ዘ ቡክ እና አውተር ላይ ላይክ ዊ ሃቭ ዩዝድ ስትሪፕ የሚለውን የተጠቀምነው ለዚህ ነው። ሶ ይህንን ብናስገባለትም ዩ ሹድ ሃቭ ስትሪፕ የተደረገ ወይ ደግሞ ዋይት ስፔስ የሌለውን መጠቀም አለበት ማለት ነው። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ኢንፑቶችን ደግሞ እዚህ ጋር we can validate them ቴስት ኢምፒቲ ታይትል ኤንድ ኤቭሪቲንግ ማለት እንችላለን። ግን ሌትስ ሲ አክቹሊ ቴስት አድርገን እንየው። So unit test. So let's see where I am. Okay. So let's say just Python 3 minus m unit test. So 74 ናቸው ሁሉም አልፈዋል። actually በዚህኛው ኬዝ 74 ቴስቶች ናቸው አጠቃላይ። በጣም ረጅም ቴስት ነው። of course I think I have to reduce it somehow, but I think so ለምን አበላሽተናል ነው አንዳንድ ነገሮችን አበላሽተናቸው። ለምሳሌ እዚህ ጋር let me create a white space ሴቭ ላድርግ ሶሪ ሴቭ ላድርገው ከዛ let me run it. So if you can see here fail አድርጓል ምክንያቱም white space like already on the function it's going to remove it, but እዚህ ጋር ደግሞ እየጠበኩ ያለው እኔ የሌለው ነው። so እዚህ ጋር ኢኳል አሰርት ኢኳል ብዬ ስለሆነ የጀመርኩት አሰርት ኢኳል ስላልሆነ it's going to fail ማለት ነው። በሌላ ኬዝ ደግሞ what if እሺ ኬዝ የምትፈልጉት አለ ማየት maybe test invalid outer types so value error አሁን ለምሳሌ outer እዚህ ጋር ያስቀመጥኩት 1 2 3 ነው። so እዚህ ጋር ሬዝ ያደርጋል value error, so it's going to pass. So maybe if you have anything that you want to test, we can test it here, but I think passing enough heading allen. So I think if we take this and yes, so here fail አድርጓል። እሺ ግን መጀመሪያ እነዚህ ክሬት ያደረጉት just to see ኬዞችን ነው። ኦኬ ታይፕ ኤረር ያ እነዚህኞቹ ኬዞች actually I believe they are going to cover it. so እነዚህኞቹ ኬስ ሴንሲቲቭ ኤረሮች so እነዚህኞቹ ፌል የሚያደርጉ ኤረሮች ናቸው just to see እንዴት ፌል እንደሚያደርጉ። so ለምሳሌ ፌሊንግ ቴስት ኤግዛምፕል 1 አሰርሽን ሜተዳችን ልክ ካልሆነ ኢኳል ብለነው ደግሞ ከዛ በኋላ ኢኳል የማይሆን ነገር ሲሆን so እነዚህኞቹ ፍሎቲንግ ፖይንት ፕሪሲዥናቸው ስለሚለያየ ነው 0.3 እና 0.1 እና 0.2 ሲደመሩ እኩል ስለማይሆን of course incorrect expectationዎችን like ሲቀያየር ለምሳሌ ቡክ ቼክ አውት ሬታችን 0.25 ሆኖ 25.0 ስንለው ኢኳል ስላልሆነ it should fail. Yeah, so test wrong expression type error ደግሞ እዚህ ጋር አለን። so ለምሳሌ like ለምሳሌ ቡካችን if it has test book outer ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ this one and available error ነው የምንጠብቀው ግን it shouldn't make it available, so value error መስጠት አለበት። so if you use ይሄኛውን available errors book not available ብንለው ሁለተኛ ጊዜ ቼክ አውት ለሚያደርግበት ሰዓት it should work, but since we are expecting it to return a book it shouldn't work and so on and so on. of course ይሄንን ሼር ስለማደርግላችሁ with examples pass የሚያደርጉ ኤግዛምፕል ከዛ ደግሞ ሪፋክተር በመናደርጋቸው ሰዓት ደግሞ እንዴት እንደሚሻሻሉ የሚያሳይ ቴስቶች ስላሉ you can just go through them እንዴት ፓስ እንደሚያደርጉ ለምን ፌል እንዳደረጉና ደግሞ ለምን ፓስ እንደሚያደርጉም እዚህ ጋር you already have their like explanation. So maybe you can take a look at them. Like 8 ራን አረገ ከዛ በኋላ 6ቱ ፌል አረገ አንዱ ኢረር አለን so 7ቱ ፌል አድርጓል ማለት ነው። Yeah, okay. So yeah, I think we can wrap up here. Of course, I think it's better. Oh, sorry. Okay, it's okay. Actually, ጨርሰናል create አድርጌው ነው። So I think it's better to actually push it to my GitHub because GitHub ሊንኩም ሰጣችሁ ምክንያቱም it's a lot of files plus it's huge. So let me just change some things now እስከ ማታ ድረስ I'm gonna share. Okay, እስከ ማታ እስከ ሌሊት ድረስ yeah I'm gonna share my link, my GitHub link ወይ ደግሞ GitHub ከዚህ በፊት share ስላደረኩት maybe you can see it there. But is it clear, guys? So are you ready like ለአሁኑ ለማስገባት በአሁኑ submission ላይ? Okay, so everything is clear አይደለ? So በአሁኑ ላይ I'm going to expect use unit testoች በሚቀጥለው ደግሞ pi testoችን እናያለን። Yeah. Okay, if you don't have any questions, I think we can finish up here. Thank you, guys. አመሰግናለሁ። መልካም ጊዜ. Let me just stop the recording.
Sorry, one really quick question. Sorry, just one really quick question. I'm just wondering, do we need unit tests for this specific challenge?
ካቆምኩ በኋላ please go on.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to ask, do we need unit tests for this challenge or for the next one onwards?
Nabil, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, or is it giving you a little bit trouble to hear
for
me?
For all, like for onwards from here.
Issue. So when we do this, the final
yes, I can. I think there is a lag.
Sorry about that. So when we have the final
guys,
submission
is it from my side? Guys, is it from my side or
is it from your side?
Yes.
Sorry, let me try again. Is it better right now, Kirat, or is it still unclear?
Yeah, I think it's from my side.
It is. I can hear your connection cutting up as well.
Let me just change my connection. Yeah, for some reason it's not working.
Kirat, can you hear me better now?
No, I can hear you. I think it's from my side. So can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good.
So I was just wondering, do we need to do unit tests for this challenge, the one that we're submitting on Tuesday, or are we going to be doing it from challenge 3, like from week 3 onwards?
Of course, like I would like to see it. I would like to see you guys try at least start to use it from this one.
Okay, beautiful. I just wanted to have clarification. Thanks for the clarification, Kirat. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you.
Sorry for the connection, I think. Yeah, okay.
It happens, Ethiopia.
Yeah, I know. Okay, anyone else? Any other questions, guys? Leda, do you have one? You got a question?
Yes.
Okay.
ሰማለሁ አይደል? በደንብ
Yes, you can.
ጥያቄን ግልጽ ለማድረግ በአማርኛ ላድርገው።
Yeah, it's okay. So just Okay, I'm sorry, just to make it clear. So the reason that we're using English or we're trying to speak in English is that we have some trainees that rely on the transcription. The recording is being transcribed. So there are trainees that rely on it. So that's why we try to speak in English. So just to make it clear, okay? But you can continue in Amharic or any language as long as I can speak it. Actually, yeah.
Okay. You're demoing unit test. Most of the tests were some kind of easily testable functions. There are some kind of numbers and other things. But in our projects, most of the functions are returning unexpected values. For example, if we do some sentiment analysis, we don't know what kind of output before the hand. So the one of the best practices, first writing the test and then test that function to be failed. After that, write that function in order to pass it right. That was the main.
Yes. Okay, so for the sentiment example, so you already have your border cases, right? Like, so for the sentiment analysis, the maximum is positive one, and for the minimum is negative one. So that's already expected value, right?
Yeah.
Like you can take those as boundary cases or edge cases, and you can also include some unexpected cases and test them there. But for test cases, okay, continue. Yeah.
So these things can be easily testable, right? There is a negative one and the positive one in between zero. The boundary case can be tested. But in traditional programming, we know the logic beforehand, so we are testing that logic whether it gives the right value or not. But in our cases, we are not going to use some kind of logic. Because of that, we cannot tell what kind of output besides those boundary values. So what kind of tests are we are going to write in this data science project? ሜቢ ግልጽ ለማድረግ ደግሞ በአማርኛ ልድገመው ማለት ይሄ ትራዲሽናሊ የምንጽፋቸው ፋንክሽኖች በቃ ቴስት የምናደርገው አክቹዋሊ ሎጂኩ የታዘዘውን ነገር ሰርቷል ወይስ አልሰራም የሚለውን እና አጌንስት ፐርፎርማንስ ሌላ ነገሮች ነው። ዳታ ሳይንስ ላይ ግን ፋንክሽኑ ላይክ እኛ ከሱ ነው የሚመልስልንን አይተን ከዛ ሰም ካይንድ ኦፍ ኢንሳይት የምናወጣው አይደለ። የለማናቀው አውትፑት እንዴት ነው ዩኒት ቴስት ልንጽፍ የምንችለው ይስማማል ወይ ከፕሮጀክቱ ጋር የሚለውን እንደ ጥያቄ ስለሆነብኝ ነው።
Of course, yeah, it's excellent question actually. So, for example, if we take the sentiment example, so we already know, like, since like if we use like the Vader or like the text blob function or like a package, we already know that what we are going to get. So testing if the output is from -1 to 1 might not make sense because that's already known. But for instance, let's say we have created a function that's going to take two sets of data and do some machine learning, or like you train it and then you you test it, and there is some type, for example, the type of the data output that you expect from a column from the output. Okay, so you have a function that takes in a set of data and do some processes. It could be training, and then testing it, and then building your model, and so on and so on. And then let's say the output from that function is a set of data, another data. And from that data, let's say you expect some output. Of course, okay. For instance, let's say one column, from one column, you will expect a numerical value. So even testing, if the output from that function is always numerical, can be considered as a unit test. So you already know what kind of input you're gonna get. So when I say the output and the input, don't take it as a result. For example, there are some known results, right? Yes, Nabil. So
I'm
okay.
sorry, I was just going to add to that, going on from what you were saying, that a lot of times I noticed that, especially when doing data science, you really have expecting a certain type of data structure, whether it's a list, whether it's a column, and whether it has a certain type of naming convention. So you can even have unit tests to make sure that that kind of naming convention is correct. So if you expect to have a list as a result, it's a list. If you expect to have a tuple as a result, it's a tuple. If you expect to have this kind of naming convention that confirms to this kind of regulatory expression, like that's another kind of test you can do. And even for other kind of things, like when we're doing sentiment analysis, for me, what I try to do a compound approach. So it should have some kind of accuracy. So you might even have like 20 different examples with known labels. So maybe 30 different examples with known labels to actually test your model against. So if your model performs well against those 30 known labels, that can itself be a type of unit test. I just wanted to add that. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. It's okay. It's a good example. So, like we have this thing.
Let me add a follow-up to this. That. So if it's that case, what's the difference between this unit test and training the model?
So it's very different. So training the model, you mean testing it. So you are testing it on a set of, like, already, like you have a model, so you have split it into test and train, and you have trained it on you have trained your model on a set of trained data set, and you're gonna test it and see if it is the accuracy, and change things if it's not good enough. So you have already like made that pipeline, right? So in addition to that, you need to see that the function. So the function is the pipeline. So I'm like, are you following me? So the function is the pipeline. So you have the pipeline that's going to take the data, is going to train it and do stuff and test it, and it's going to give you the model or just an output. So you're going to test the output, not the model. If the model is the output, you're going to test the model, of course. But like we are going to test the component of the function, which is for like the component of the software, which is, for this case, the function or the class. So we are testing the individual component of the software, which in this case is the function or the class, which could be the pipeline, the whole pipeline that's going to define how to test it, how to training, the testing, and so on and so on. So you already have an output from that function. If the output of the function is, for instance, the model, you can test that model by using for example, what you expect from the model as an output. So you already know if the model is going to classify, for example, for a given features, if it's going to classify it as true, you already know that it's going to classify it as true. So you're going to say true. And so that's, I think, what you're trying to point out, right? So what is the difference between this and that? But what if you can test if the output is the correct one? What if you can test if the output is actually a model? What if you can test if the model, like the output is a pickle file? What if you can test this kind of thing? So that, like, if the output is certain types of data, the data type, like the type, you can also test the type, the output of the type, and so on and so on. So what you can say can also be added to the function, to the unit test as well, but you can have also an additional like test cases. I'm Mikhail.
Thank you for clarification.
Exactly, but like I really like your point of view and your question. So I really want to hear your opinion on this one. So is it really clear, or are you just saying?
Yeah, it's already clear. I know you know what is the unit test, how it's tested on other kind of applications. So for this one, when it comes to data science, that kind of question came into my mind. So I know the difference between cross model training and this unit testing, but somehow they are converging to me when you and Nabila explain it. So I will dig by myself some additional tutorial. So even if not answered, I will ask you on the next section. So for the time being, it's clear for me.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the question. It's a really good question. I'm Mikhail. So anyone else with a question? Anything, like it could be anything. Anyone else going once, going twice? Okay, in that case, I think we can end the session. Thank you guys for joining.